the subject I'm really interested in. Okay. So it's also like, it's not like I'm doing this to get just, clicks. I'm a Bitcoiner. I do walk the walk. I'm a Bitcoiner. I got the majority of my net worth in Bitcoin. I care deeply about what Bitcoin is going to do over the next 10 years. And, my number one reason for doing this is to engage with people so that I can develop my own personal opinion of this stuff. And, it reinforces my conviction on this stuff. That's why I do it, right? It's not really to do anything else. And I would say you can get a lot out of social media if you do this. You will get a lot out of it. You will meet people like we're talking, we met. But like there's a lot of people that you will meet, you can meet on social media if you put out enough content out there. Other good stuff will come back to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to 21st Capital. Today, we have a wonderful guest, one of my favorite guys to follow on Twitter. I love his takes, and he's been emerging as a personality in this space for, I guess mostly this year and the end of last year. Since you really began sharing your thoughts, people love to follow and learn from it.
Well, thanks, Tina. I appreciate it.
So, what we are planning for today is to learn a little bit more about Fred. So you've had a very interesting journey. You're one of those people that have gone very deep down the math rabbit hole, and gone to the end of it. A PhD in Stanford in mathematics and operations research is one of the hardest things you can do. And then from there, like, you expect this type of person to be like highly, highly academic, loves to just sit in a room and work with equations, but you're actually also extremely socially intelligent, engaged. You've had a successful career in investing, which, it requires a lot of understanding of math, but also a lot of academic types would fail miserably in Wall Street because the way they think kind of doesn't match the way the crowd thinks. And I remember this interesting quote that the most intellectuals will blow up if given a portfolio. The reason for that is they can't kind of understand the trends. They're kind of in their own head, and they have this complex analysis, which causes them to kind of miss the big trends. But you'll have these both sides, and that's very interesting. Um, and yeah, we are glad to have you share your thoughts with us.
Well, thanks, Tina. Yeah, I think I have an unusual background for both Bitcoin, for kind of where Bitcoin sits right now, right? Which is, Bitcoin is somewhat a Wall Street story now. It's an investment story. It's a mainstream investment story, and we have these ETFs now that are traded on Wall Street, and but it's also a very technical story, and not there's not a lot of people really. There's not a lot of people who are kind of from both worlds, from the, okay, I understand the technical side of Bitcoin, and also kind of I understand investors, and I understand Wall Street. So that's kind of where I came out of, and that's why I really didn't really have that much to say before these ETFs came out, because I was sort of like, okay, well, I own a bunch of Bitcoin, but and I understand Bitcoin and I love Bitcoin, but I didn't really have an angle. And I had nobody followed me on Twitter. There's a lot of people who are great who nobody follows on Twitter, and I was one of those guys, right? And like Money or Debt is another one of those guys, who I think he had maybe under 1,000 followers on Twitter when I was following him, and so it's sort of like, and he had just a wealth of knowledge on power laws and Bitcoin and everything else, but nobody followed him. And I was sort of in that boat, and I kind of when these ETFs came out, I just started making a few videos, just sort of saying like, I wonder if anybody's going to watch this stuff, but probably not. But let's see. And yeah, and then I sort of emerged as kind of a, and I've been very good at increasing my Twitter following. So, I think it's a lot of people are like, "Well, Fred, how did you do it?" And I'm like, "Well, how did Rockefeller become the largest oil refiner?" Well, he kind of set his mind to becoming the largest oil refiner, and he did, And it's kind of like I kind of looked at Twitter as like, okay, once I got in a little challenge, a little bit ahead of Twitter, I sort of said, you know what, I'm going to take this thing as like a challenge, and let's see if I can figure out what works, what doesn't work. I'm not gonna compromise any ethics or anything to get it. I'm not gonna buy followers on Fiverr or anything like that. But I just want to sort of see, do a little bit of A/B testing. What are the things that what works for Twitter and what doesn't work. And the same thing for YouTube, right? I had no YouTube whatsoever, and I started getting some traffic on Twitter, and then some people were telling me like, "Hey, Fred, you might want to consider doing YouTube." And then I said, "But, you're gonna you have a different challenge with YouTube." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay, what's that?" And he's like, "Well, your audience is gonna be a lot younger." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, interesting." And I'm like, and then I was like, "Well, okay." I said, "And the number one thing about YouTube is the picture that you see, right? That picture is everything, right? So it has to be a human face. If people don't see a human face, and ideally a human face that goes like that, or
Exactly. Yeah.
some kind of like, or like that, or something like that, right? Those are the things that people click on.
Some people have this theory of you need the audience to see the whites of your eyes. So
Yeah.
white as possible, most shocked thumbnails, and they actually work well. So
You know, Humans are pattern recognition machines, and they just like they like to understand another human and get real close, and they can sort of understand what that other human's thinking. And that's, I think, why sort of person to person interaction is the best, because you can really see the whites of the eyes. You can see
Mhm.
the little, you can see the sweat beads, you can see somebody's having fun, or, and you can get all those subliminal signals. But yeah, for YouTube, it's all about the image, and then I think it's also, and I think a lot of what I say to people is, look, it's about authenticity, right? It's, I have a 17-year-old who's doing a bunch of college essays right now, right? And so I'm kind of going through this, and I got this really great book on, how to write college essays. And of course he's not interested in reading the book, but I read the book, and it's really all about being super authentic, and, crafting something that's kind of smart, clever, and that somebody goes, this person's pretty clever, and I like this person. And actually, if you think about Twitter, it's sort of the same thing. It's about getting something that's short, clever, and you're basically trying to convince the person that to like you. And so, and actually, I was having this exact same conversation with a friend today, and I said, somebody, Wayne, and I was talking to Wayne, and I said, Wayne, I'm sort of really in the zone right now on Twitter. Like, I can kind of find the right headline for the moment. And I said, for example, you know, Twitter banned NFTs this morning, and not Twitter. The SEC sort of put out some statement saying that NFTs are securities, implicitly, right? And so I said, there's a lot of ways you can say that. You could say news, NFTs are securities, right? And I just sort of said, how I can say that in a clever way. And I said, well, yesterday Trump issued an NFT. Today, Gary Gensler banned NFTs. Just something like that. And everybody's like, coincidence? And and so, and that tweet, which I made a couple hours ago, has gotten like 600 likes. And I pretty much got the same engagement on that tweet as Cameron Winklevoss, who tweeted the exact same thing. and I retweeted his tweet as well because I like showing people his perspective. But, it's just sort of like I managed to kind of say the thing, and it's almost like if you can say the thing in as few words as possible, that's the best, you know? It's sort of like it's like writing copy for the Daily Bugle, you know? You're Peter Parker, and you need to write some copy for the Daily Bugle, and it's gotta be really, it's gotta be really good, you know? Or not Peter Parker, Clark Kent, you know? Yeah, so
Absolutely. That's an art. That's not easy to figure out.
it's not something that most people on Twitter are good at. They don't take a step back and sort of say, and it's something that I wasn't very good at, right? I never thought of I just put something out and I was like, whatever. And but then I started thinking through this now that I got a little bit when I started having a little bit of an engagement, I started thinking about, can I be a little bit more clever with this with the way I'm saying something? And so I really do think it's not only what you're saying, but it's how you're saying it that makes a lot of difference. And you
Like,
know, people love stories, and if you're a good storyteller, they're gonna like your stories. And like Michael Saylor is a great storyteller. At the end of the day, he's a great storyteller.
when you think about some of the stuff like Bitcoin is a wall of energy, encrypted energy, a lot of it is like, I wouldn't have said things like that because I would worry about the technical accuracy of every little thing. But man, everyone is now, it remembers this thing. And well, I guess his most famous sentence is, what is it? There's no second best.
You're right. You're being paid to step outside of the boundary here, and to be a little bit politically incorrect because like when he says something like people who save in fiat, there's a name for them. We call them poor. Your first reaction is, how dare he call them poor? But then you're like, you know what? It's kind of cool that this rich guy say, okay, people who save in fiat, they're poor. In a way, it's cool. And so you have to thread that needle pretty carefully. But, being politically correct and boring will not get you Twitter followers. You know, being just too outrageous won't either because a lot of people get offended or, you know, outraged. And I noticed, for example, if I post stuff that's political, I tend to lose followers. So, sometimes I can't help myself, but people don't like political. That's generally not something that they want. So, anyway, that's just sort of my little rant on Twitter. But
That's exactly been my observation. Whatever side you take, it's bad because there is this other side that feels offended, and for whatever reason, we don't have that kind of patience to even want to listen to another idea. As soon as they realize you have some other ideas, they don't like to follow you, and it's kind of human nature. People like to interact with people that are similar to them. So yeah, I've had the exact observation.
well,
You
also the
generally
thing is, if you just segregate yourself to only one political following, your feed will start becoming less interesting because you need those comments, you need that discussion in your feed, right? You can't have everybody be, for example, a Trump supporter. You got to get some guys in there who are like, yeah, the fact that he's selling NFTs is bullshit. You gotta have a little bit of that, right, in there, because that makes the discussion more interesting too, right? So you don't want it to be a total echo chamber, and
But, not even taking sides. I see like the nonsense everywhere, but you can't even express that easily because people are just very emotional and they just can't take anything that sounds like their camp is losing. So I've just learned to stay away from it as much as possible. But I don't want to because I want to say the stuff that I believe in. For example, I recorded a video about price controls that Kamala Harris had
yeah,
proposed, and these are just like the dumbest things you can do to an economy. Instead of thinking about production and consumption and matching supply and
Right.
demand, you are just putting your hands on prices and just try to pressure them down, assuming that this is just going to help everybody. And of course, there's no free lunch, and this is going to hurt producers and actually increases poverty. So, like, how can I say that this is not stupid? It is stupid, right? But at the same time, people don't understand that if you talk about something like this, you're not necessarily saying that, right is awesome, left is 100% bad. So that nuance gets lost on social media.
You can kind of say it, but you have to be very careful. Yeah, it's just not. It's not. But look, I mean, I think if that's who you are, then you can say it. If you want to be that guy, you can. That's just not. You know, I've never heard Michael Saylor say something that's actually political.
Mm.
I'm sure he has political views, but it's good to stay within your zone and to not widen it out. Look, I have views on jazz or classical music, but I'm not gonna like, hey, Fred Krueger, let me tell you the 10 best jazz concerts I went to. No, because most people are totally uninterested in it. And so, I think you need to stick. My radio station is K Bitcoin. You know what I mean? So I like to keep it all Bitcoin all the time. And you're not going to hear me talk about anything else other than Bitcoin. Maybe the economy as it relates to Bitcoin, maybe the election as it relates to Bitcoin. But I'm kind of here for Bitcoin. That's kind of it's my main interest in Twitter. At least it's my main public thing. I don't really have a I don't have a lot of other public things that I really want to talk to. And I think that the minute you start branching out and start dealing with other things, it just becomes almost unlistenable because, people want to tune in to Fred to hear what Fred's saying about Bitcoin. Like market's down, what does Fred think? Market's up, what does Fred think? Market sideways, okay, maybe what does Fred like? They want to hear my analysis of it, and they don't want to hear my views on anything else. So I'm pretty cognizant of that, and I try to keep it kind of buttoned up into that area, even though sometimes I want to say a few other things, but I try not to, and that's definitely worked. And whether you're doing Bitcoin or something else, you should just stick to one topic. It'll be interesting to see, like Peter McCormack is now moving his podcast away from Bitcoin only to I don't know what, just Lex Friedman, I don't know. I probably am not gonna be watching much of it if it's just sort of Peter McCormack talking about general topics, football or something. I'm not really interested in this stuff, but he's a good interviewer. But he's, and the same thing was true with TechCrunch. TechCrunch really started out as a very focused blog. It was a focused blog about startups, right? And then it became a blog about all of tech. And just like and it became when it really lost that first couple of years where it's like, wow, there's this new startup doing this, there's a new startup doing that. Okay, that's interesting, that some of them were big, some of them were small. And that was interesting. But once he started broadening to all of tech and then, conferences and stuff, it became less interesting. So I think focus is important.
Yeah, diversification takes an art. You have to be very careful because when you diversify to other topics, your focus gets diluted, and it's so hard to craft an edge for yourself, right? To be able to put out Bitcoin content that's different from others. A lot of people are seeing the same things, and lots of ideas are already there. How it's very difficult to kind of separate yourself, but it gets infinitely harder when you try to just do everything. So
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
No, I've done a few different sort of things. Like when I started, I was talking mainly about ETFs. Then I kind of got very interested in the power law, and I talked a lot about that. So I'm willing to hop and jump with topics. Within Bitcoin, I'm very interested. I've talked a little bit about the different aspects of this election on Bitcoin,
Hmm.
but and so within a category like Bitcoin, I think there's a lot with, and I think people are going to be doing shows like this about Bitcoin 10 years from now. I just feel like it's such a big topic, and there's room for a lot of them. Like I think if Peter McCormack stops this thing, you're going to have Bram for Bitcoin for millennials, or Robin, and doing a bunch of kind of deep dive on Bitcoiners and the Bitcoin lifestyle and stuff. And both of those are really interesting. It sometimes take a lot of effort to watch. Like, okay, I- I'm looking at this person. I'm going to sit there and devote an hour and a half of my time to understanding how this person. But if I'm in my car or something, yeah, maybe I want to learn how somebody got into Bitcoin or what they're thinking and stuff. So I find myself watching a lot of those content. I don't want to do really. I don't think that's me. I'm almost better with just tweets. So I think you got to look at what's good for you, right? What is your forte? So I like a lot of these things. I've been a supporter of my competition, right? Like, my competition, but like, simply Bitcoin, great, do your thing, Ram, do your thing. It's great. Uh, the world needs more of these things. And, whether it's long form video, short form video, tweets, power law type stuff, math to me is a whole, I think that's a great area too, right? Because there's not a lot of like math people in this world, and there's a big kind of education process for, like, I mean, I what percentage of math, what percentage of Bitcoiners do you think have an idea what is a differential equation? I just I don't I don't think
I
any
won't even say
they would not
1%.
know how to do it. They would not even know what you're talking about. What Define a differential equation? They'd be like, no idea.
And when you get into crypto, I think it gets worse. Not Bitcoin, the whole crypto. Like, ask people, if you lose 50% of your investment, how much do you have? But now if you lose another 50%, how much do you have? You just
Right.
wouldn't people the zero, or I'm very surprised to see many people look at coins and just comparing the prices. And if it's cheaper, it's probably, they think it has an easier time to grow. Like if it's 1 cent, okay, it's gonna get to $1. How much money is it gonna take? But Bitcoin 60,000, oh, it's already too expensive. You I was shocked to see these things actually work on people.
I mean, retail doesn't retail, that's why stock splits still work, right? I mean, it's not specific to Bitcoin. It's just a lot of retail likes to buy things that have low dollar prices so they can get a lot of them. And that's one of the reasons why things like Shiba Inu were very successful, right? Because they're like, oh, I'll make 1 quadrillion coins. Okay, great. So somebody can say, wow, I'm a Shiba Inu billionaire. Okay, well, great.
Yeah.
You know, I
so
think,
so let's so let's do this.
yeah,
As we kind of wrap up this general introduction,
yeah.
summarize your thoughts, because we talked a lot of, you shared with us a lot of gems about social media strategy. So if someone's listening to this and thinking, hey, I'm a content producer, I want to be smarter, what would you say, like a few things to do, a few things not to do?
I would say figure out who you are. Be as authentic as you possibly can be. Like, figure out, what do you bring that's unique to the table, right? And everybody's got something, but a lot of people, they're just putting out something that's not unique. So figure out what you have that's unique and concentrate on that, right? It might be that you're old, it might be that you're young, it might be that you just moved to El Salvador and you're going to live on Bitcoin next year. That's a story, right? So you know, it goes back down to the newsroom analogy, right? You got to write an interesting story, and you got your story's got to be somewhat interesting. Now, I think what people realize with me is my personal story, and we'll get into that, is pretty interesting. Like, why? I got a PhD in math from Stanford, right? Number one. Number two, I worked on Wall Street and made quite a bit of money on Wall Street, 6 years of prop trading. I had this whole career on Wall Street. Well, that's interesting. Number three, as a startup guy, I had $500 million worth of exits. Okay. Now, some none of them are tools that you use today, right? And all those companies, everything I built was subsumed. That's the way. There's very few products that can withstand, that amount of time, right? We're not using AOL very much anymore, or even things that were super successful like AOL, right? We're not using anymore. So, you know, but nevertheless, these, I've had a lot of experiences, and I think that's interesting and sets me apart. And I'm a little older, and also that's interesting, you know. So I think all those things are a little interesting. Now, find the interesting thing that you are. Be completely authentic. Don't try to pretend you're something that you're not. You know, I think that's really important. And I would say edit it out. Just don't don't post for the sake of posting. Only post when you have something to say. And if you don't have anything to say, be quiet. It's okay. Those are
Likewise.
my It's nothing crazy, but, you'd be surprised at how many people do not follow that advice.
Yeah, great ideas, and it has worked. And I've been personally like, I think I really paid attention to your content when you were at like 10, 15,000, and I could see at that time that, you're just doing a phenomenal job. You exactly know how to deal with the complexities of social and how to thread the needle between, you know, having a lot of novelty and also keeping your own personality, connecting with people, not sounding too academic, but at the same time being very rich in the way you look at things. It's a lot of things to keep in mind, and I'm sure there's a lot of it coming naturally to you, but also just you put your mind into this
Well,
and
it's a subject I'm really interested in. Okay, so it's also like it's not like I'm doing this to get just, clicks. I'm a Bitcoiner, I do walk the walk. I'm a Bitcoiner. I got the majority of my net worth in Bitcoin. I care deeply about what Bitcoin is going to do over the next 10 years. And, my number one reason for doing this is to engage with people so that I can develop my own personal opinion of this stuff. And, it reinforces my conviction on this stuff. That's why I do it, right? It's not really to do anything else. So, and I would say you can get a lot out of social media if you do this. You will get a lot out of it. You will meet people like we're talking and we met. But like there's a lot of people that you will meet, you can meet on social media if you put out enough content out there. Other good stuff will come back to you.